What's up, gamers? This is NGG here with another review video. This time it is for River City Rival Showdown. Now this is a prequel to a couple of the River City Girls games, and we'll get into that in story. But as I say because I am not doing this alone. This is a co-op review again, and we have somebody you guys should know from the channel.
Hey everyone, my name is Devine Cummings, voice acting, also known as Minako 97 here today, and I'm here to review River City with Nintendo Gamer Gal here today.
And we are happy to have him along for the ride. Alright guys, we're gonna get into story as always, gameplay, and we'll give it a rating for you guys. This is a beat 'em up, and in the beat 'em up category, this is an old school beat 'em up, but revamped and revised, and they even added a multiplayer fighting game, which we did not get into but once in the game because it was story in the story. Other than that, we didn't play that. So this is just going to be on the base game, not the fighting game that's attached to it. Alright, so let's get into the story of this one. And now, like I said, this is a prequel to the River City Girls series that you guys, if you haven't watched all these other reviews, I'll link them up above. I've already reviewed River City Zero, River City Girls 0, River City Girls, and River City Girls 2. This takes place before that. This is still Kunio and his friend Ricky, but in this one, they are not with those girls. Ricky, I believe, is dating Mommy in this version. So this is before they dated the girls in the other game. Just so you guys know, it's a very prequel to the other games that we already know and love. So in this one, you're Kunio. The main character is Kunio, and you're running around like for no reason. People just want to fight you. Like two twins come out of nowhere, and they are like taking over all the territory over every school, and they're beating up like the big hot shots in every school and like they want to be the toughest of all the schools, and they want to be the leaders of all the schools. So this is gang-like activity, by the way. And so they're trying to lead all the schools by beating up the strongest people in every school. And so in this school where we see them, that is Kunio in his school and Ricky in his school are the leaders, like the biggest and strongest people in their school. So everywhere you're going, you are trying to beat up everybody who's trying to get like rep points or something like that. And this game takes place in like a 3-day sequence. So like you have to get places that are timed by certain locations, and so you can miss storyline if you don't talk to everybody and see where you have to be at a specific time. And we'll probably go over that in gameplay, but just know that a lot of stuff has to do with you're in the River City, and this all takes place in 3 days in the game where all this is happening, them taking over the school and trying to knock down all the people and stealing girlfriends as well. Instead of the boyfriends being stolen this time, this one is the girlfriends being stolen from the game. Is there anything you'd like that you think I missed in the story?
There's a lot to the story. Some of it might be spoiler, but I'm gonna try to leave that out. But so essentially with the story, Ricky, I think is his name, or is it Kunio?
Kunio's the one with white, Ricky's the one with blue.
Okay, the one with white, the main character.
Kunio.
It starts off like, he's, going through the town and everything, and they're like, hey, you should probably meet up with your friend before they gang up on him at the restaurant. And then the story goes in like in very different directions. Like it's not a very straightforward, it's not a straightforward story essentially. Like you'll follow like the beaten path, and then sometimes you'll have side missions that will take you all over the place. So the story is very like convoluted and like very scattered, very much so, because you will go from trying to find, your friend to ended up, going to the factory where the main story seems to take place at with all the rival gangs. And then you find, your friend, and then it kind of just goes like all over the place. So the story is very like scattered and very, what's the word? Not convoluted, but I'm drawing a blank here, but it's all over the place is what I'm trying to say. It's very episodic. So like with this game in particular, when it comes to story, there is no straight narrow path. It'll take you like in many directions, and you will come across many other characters before you get to the core of the final day, essentially.
Right. And I think I kind of like that it did take us in different twists and turns, and different things were happening. I know I personally never felt that it was convoluted, but that's just me personally. I was keeping up with the story. Now that we've touched on the story and what it's about, let's get over and shoot over to gameplay.
All right, so gameplay is a lot. At its core, it is a beat 'em up, but once you start playing, you'll soonly realize that it's kind of a beat 'em up mixed with the RPG elements. RPG elements being level ups, skills, stats, and essentially like decision making on top of it. When you first start off after the game, when you first start the game, you'll be doing like 1 damage like per person or per attack. And as you go along, you are able to level up your stats or your attacks as you know you do more battles and everything. But the problem is you're supposed to come across like random battles as you go along, but the issue is when the game starts out, it only gives you boss fights. So you're doing boss fights and giving them, you know, doing 1 HP or 1 damage, whereas they're doing like 17, 16 like per hit on you as a player. So it becomes very frustrating and can be very taxing at time. And then on top of that, there are decision making, like there are decisions like depending on like how like a cutscene or an event will play out, or essentially over time, like when you have to meet certain deadlines to certain events, they'll be like, hey, meet here at 8 o'clock or at 6 o'clock. And then unfortunately you have to figure out during military time in game, what is 8 o'clock or 10 o'clock PM mean for military time, because the game doesn't really establish this very well, but in game it runs on military time, but the text is running on like normal like EST to PST time zones, so that it gets very confusing, and then you'll have to figure out which item matches with which time zone, you know, leading up to the main event or even side mission or even side events in the game itself. And depending on where you are in the story or in the map itself, depending on the time difference, there are submissions and there are main missions that are available at certain times of days or certain times and days, and that can only be available during those times and days, because once you skip over to like, let's say the next day or the next hour, those submissions or those side missions can no longer be available once you start moving forward during the passage of time, essentially.
Right. And I kind of did like, I hated and liked the time mechanic at the same time, right? Because they gave you places to go, but sometimes there was nothing to do in between, and the time would not progress very fast. And so even looking for random battles in the streets wasn't helping us. We would have to, there's a shop that sells something that helps you move along the time, but it only is in 1 hour, 2 hour, or full day increments. So and when I say full day, it'll take you to 3 p.m. EST or 3 p.m. in that time zone, in game time zone, for the next day. So because nothing happens before 3 o'clock, so that's why it takes you place. But I'm like, can we move this game along a little faster? Like, why do I have to buy like this knockout pill that makes me move over the time in order to progress the game? So I liked that it had time mechanics. I didn't like that the clock was so slow. We were walking over to our destination, and sometimes we would be there on like 2 or 3 hours ahead of time and have to wait and take 2 of those little knockout pills to wake us up right as the story progressed. And I did like that the map had all these like little question marks and quotation marks of where you should be going during those hours. So if you're looking for something to do, you could just walk over to one of those quotation marks and find whatever was the mini event or sub event. And I did like I said, that it had an overarching story in that it all makes sense at the end. And like I said, I know you'd think it was convoluted, but for me, it all makes sense. All these little battles that are happening in all these little schools and all these little areas, they all stem from the same thing that's gonna happen at the end of the story. So you just have to pay attention to the story if you don't want to get mixed up in what's going on. Pay attention, because I think that's the biggest thing, that if you don't, then you will lose sight of what's going on. And there are, like he said, a lot of things going on. We also did kind of cheese the game kind of at the end, where we were like super overpowered at the end because of all these little mini fights we were getting into and all the building of our stats. We buffed ourselves out completely, where we were doing so much damage to how little damage they were doing to us, that at the end, I think even the boss fight was super easy. All the boss fights at the end were super easy, because we had overgrind. I think because we had come from one hit damage to everything, we were like overcompensating. We were like, all right, well, let's just grind this out, buy the stats, and then we buffed ourselves up to the point where now we're over buff. And so I guess there is a way to cheese the game if you're finding it super hard, but just know that you can do that. I wouldn't recommend it because it's super, like, the bosses were super easy at the end once we got to them. Is there anything else that we missed in gameplay?
Yeah, the only thing we missed were like the abilities. Like there's a shop where you can learn, or you can get books to give you new abilities, and then as you continue through the story, you can also learn new abilities that way. Those abilities use SP, but as long as you keep fighting, you can easily gain that SP back up to use your special move, essentially. But other than like the special moves and like items and that one main story mission where you play Double Dragon, the fighting game, that's about it, really.
Okay. All right, let's get to a rating for us. What would you rate River City Rival Showdown?
I would rate it a 3 out of 5. It's not a terrible game, but there is a lot of factors that hold it back. Mainly the two being the military time system and how the game starts. Once you get past through the start, it's not nearly as difficult nor annoying, because like I said, after the start, you will get the random encounters, you will get the experience, you will understand how the game functions. But at the very beginning of the game, it just kind of tosses you in there and expects you to figure out what's going on, how it functions. And mainly just the one hit on the boss fight thing was like really just throws everything off. Now, like I said, it doesn't become that the whole time, but at the very start, that is like a downer, especially when you're kind of forced to figure out how everything functions, so it doesn't become that the entire period. And then, like I said, the other reason why I give it a 3 out of 5 is just the simple fact that it runs on military time, like, and the text runs on like modern day regular timing, so it's just like that throws it like a monkey into the wrench. And then, not to mention, there's like a 3-day period where side missions can get completely skipped. So when you get through the credits, you're like, oh, I never met that character, I never met that character. And the thing is, you will never meet those characters, because unless you meet them at a certain time at a particular moment, it can be completely glossed over. So a lot of times you'll have no idea like what you missed or what you skipped out on. And then not only that, I wasn't a fan of like the ending or the boss fights, because they kind of just went back and forth all over the place. Like, you end up like, at first it becomes this thing where you're fighting the band of 7, and then you end up fighting like some type of dude that can manipulate objects. So with all that being said, that's why I gave it a 3 out of 5.
I think you're mixing up your stories. The Band of 7 is somebody else. The Band of 4 is the one we fought.
No, they're pretty much the same thing. No, they're the same thing in my book.
So, for me, I'm gonna give this a 3.5. I actually like this game. I would have liked to give it a 4, but it was short as well. And that's gonna be my main thing with beat 'em ups, that they're so short, right? And I guess if you were playing by yourself, they wouldn't feel as short. But because I love playing my beat 'em ups in multiplayer, we can speed through them so fast. It took us 2 days to beat this game, maybe with 2-3 hour sessions. So max, we played like 6 to 8 hours, and beat the game. So I that's what I don't like about beat 'em ups. They're just so short. But that's the only reason why I kind of like the story. I do like that they revamped the graphics, so even though they were oldish, they didn't feel oldish, right? Like it didn't feel pixelated, even though it kind of was. It was not. You'll see when you look at the graphics, but I actually liked the game. I liked the story. They did change a lot of the stuff from the other games, so I definitely didn't know this was a prequel to the River City Girls games, but it was fun to experience it nonetheless. You want to give us your exit ticket?
Yeah, so you can find me on YouTube at Devine Cummings Voice Acting, and my other social media is at Devine Cummings Voiceover in the description of this video. And thank you, Nintendo Gamer Gal, for having me today.
It was a pleasure having you to play this game with me as well. Guys, this is a local and online beat 'em up, so you can play this with people online and offline if you want. I hope you guys enjoyed this review. Happy gaming, guys. Bye.